Israeli troops have boarded a Gaza-bound ship that has tried to break through its naval blockade. A number of European lawmakers and other pro-Palestinian activists were on board, including at least one former Canadian MP. According to officials, they offered no resistance. No injuries have been reported. According to a spokesperson for the ship, masked soldiers boarded the boat and cut communications about 50 kilometers from Gaza. The Swedish-owned ship left Naples on October 7th, carrying about 30 people and items like cement, basketballs, and musical instruments. Joining us from Gaza is David Heap, spokesperson for the Canadian float to Gaza, Gaza's Ark. Thanks very much, David, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Israeli troops are now on the flotilla. Is there an inherent danger for those who are on board?
Well, it's always dangerous when you're facing one of the largest militaries in the world who are not accountable to anybody. Israel is given a free hand by the governments of the world, including our own government in Canada, who never seem to call them on their crimes, whether they're crimes against internationals, as in this case, or the crimes which are repeated and very frequent against Palestinian civilians in this country.
You were in a similar situation last year. What are the passengers possibly feeling right now?
Well, when I was on the Tahrir, the Canadian boat to Gaza last year, so we were stopped 45 miles out of Palestinian waters, in international waters, off Palestinian waters, last November. So it is frightening, of course, but when we last spoke to Jim Manley, the Canadian on board, last night and then early this morning, he said they were prepared. They've been doing nonviolence training for many days, and he said there was less fear on board the Estelle than there was among the party caucuses in Ottawa. So I think we have a situation where there's more courage among ordinary Canadians and people of different European countries than there is in the governments of our country.
Seeing this happened last year and then again today, why keep going back?
Well, you know, in the 1960s, this campaign to end the blockade of Gaza has been compared by people like Alice Walker, the U.S. writer, to the freedom rides against segregation in the U.S. for civil rights there. And when the early freedom riders were busted up and sent back violently, they didn't decide to stay at home and sit on their hands. They went back in larger numbers, and they kept going back until they helped the African Americans win their civil rights and bring an end to segregation. So the same logic applies here. It applied in South Africa. We don't simply allow ourselves to be intimidated. We stand with people who need the witness of grassroots solidarity from around the world.
As you mentioned, former Canadian MP Jim Manley is on board. How does this incident affect Canadian relations?
Well, I think it's part of a pattern where there's this deafening silence coming out of Ottawa. The whole political class, all of the political parties in Ottawa have chosen to say nothing about this and sit on their hands. So Canada, people around the world are looking at our government, and Canadians are looking at our government saying, why the silence? Why not speak out, not just because Jim Manley, not just because you know, Canadians are involved. Canadians were involved last year, and the government did nothing, quite frankly. Or less than nothing. But why this silence from Ottawa on the Palestinians' basic human right of freedom of movement in and out of their country? It's into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And for some reason, when it's Palestinian human rights, we hear nothing from our governments.
As part of a group that helps organize these flotillas, what is your goal by doing this?
Our goal is very simple. We continue to sail. We will sail again with Gaza's Ark next year. We continue to sail until the Palestinians win their freedom of movement. The blockade is wrong in international law. It's very clear. It's contrary to the obligations of an occupying force, which Israel is an occupying force in international law. They're required under the Geneva Conventions to allow normal civilian commerce. It's one of the many obligations which they don't respect. To the civilian population of all of Palestine. But in particular, in the case of the Palestinians of Gaza, they have an obligation to allow peaceful civilian trade, which this and shipping, which this ship is part of, and the future plans for the Gaza's Ark are part of. So this is a simple matter of calling for the respect for international law and obligations of states under international law.
All right, David Heap, spokesperson for the Canadian float to Gaza, Gaza's Ark. We appreciate your time. Thanks so much for this.
Thank you very much for having me.